My wife called me by another man's name at her sister's wedding. Twice. The first time happened during her maid of honor toast, champagne flute raised high above the reception crowd like she was conducting some drunken orchestra. Dana swayed slightly in her emerald dress, the one that cost more than most people's rent, and declared to 200 guests how Michael and I have been through so much together. Michael, not Garrett. Michael. The room went silent for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for every person there to process what they'd heard, long enough for my face to burn red, long enough for my sister-in-law Rachel to shoot me a look that could have cut glass. Then Dana laughed, that tinkling sound she made when she was embarrassed, and corrected herself. Garrett, God, I'm so nervous. Garrett and I have been through so much together, and seeing Rachel find her perfect match just reminds me how lucky I am. Everyone laughed. Wedding guests love a good blooper. The moment passed like a summer storm. Quick, dramatic, then forgotten. Except Rachel wasn't laughing. She was staring at Dana with the kind of intensity usually reserved for crime scenes. I forced a smile and raised my own glass when Dana finished her speech. What else was I supposed to do? Make a scene at my sister-in-law's wedding? Demand to know who Michael was in front of half the town? I'm not that guy. I'm the steady one, the reliable one, the one who fixes things quietly without drama. But my mind was racing. Michael. The name hung in the air like smoke, invisible to everyone else, but choking me slowly. The second time happened an hour later during our slow dance. Dana had her arms around my neck, her breath sweet with champagne and something darker underneath. She was whispering about how beautiful the wedding was, how she couldn't wait for our anniversary trip next month, how much she loved me. Then she called me Michael again. I love you so much, Michael, she murmured against my ear, her voice soft and intimate, meant only for me. You make me feel so alive. This time there was no crowd to laugh it off, no public embarrassment to blame on wedding nerves, just my wife in my arms, calling me by another man's name like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stopped dancing. What did you just say? Dana pulled back, blinking up at me with those green eyes that had knocked me senseless 8 years ago. I said I love you. What's wrong? You called me Michael. No, I didn't. She laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. You're hearing things, baby. Too much champagne. But I wasn't hearing things. And from the corner of my eye, I could see Rachel watching us from across the dance floor, her expression unreadable. I'm Garrett Winters, by the way. 38 years old, owner of Winters Auto Repair on the south side of town. I've got grease under my fingernails and a business degree I never use. And up until yesterday, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I work hard, pay my bills, and love my wife. Simple formula. It had been working for 8 years. But sitting in my kitchen the next morning, nursing a hangover and a cup of coffee that tasted like regret, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Dana was still asleep upstairs, dead to the world, after the wedding festivities. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on Maple Street. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. We need to talk. Check your email. I opened my laptop, still in my wrinkled dress shirt from the night before, and found a message from Rachel with a video attachment. The subject line read, I'm sorry you have to see this. The video was from Dana's bachelorette party 6 months ago. I remember the night. Dana had gone out with her girlfriends while I stayed home and watched baseball. She'd come back late, tipsy and affectionate, telling me about dinner and drinks and how much she'd missed me. What she hadn't told me about was the VIP booth at Apex, the trendy club downtown, or the man with dark hair and designer clothes who had his hands all over her, or how she'd laughed when he whispered something in her ear, throwing her head back like he was the funniest person alive, or how she'd slipped her engagement ring off her finger and dropped it into her purse before pulling him onto the dance floor. I watched the video 3 times, my coffee growing cold in my hands. Each viewing revealed new details that made my stomach clench tighter. The way she looked at him, the way she moved against him, the way she let him kiss her neck while her friends cheered and took pictures. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a woman who was completely comfortable with another man, who moved like they'd done this dance many times before. Michael. I closed the laptop and sat back in my kitchen chair, staring at the wedding photo on the wall where Dana and I smiled at the camera like we had all the answers. 8 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that, 11 years of my life with a woman who, apparently had a whole other life I knew nothing about. The rational part of my brain tried to find explanations. Maybe it was just dancing. Maybe the ring thing was innocent. Those clubs get crowded, easy to lose jewelry. Maybe Michael was just a friend, and the name slip at the wedding was coincidence. But the other part of my brain, the part that had built a successful business by paying attention to details and trusting my instincts, was screaming that I'd been played for a fool. I heard Dana's footsteps on the stairs, the familiar sound of her morning routine beginning. In a few minutes, she'd come down in her silk robe, kiss my cheek, and ask about coffee. We'd talk about the wedding, laugh about her toast mishap, and plan our Sunday like we had hundreds of times before. Except this time, I'd be wondering who Michael was and how long my wife had been lying to me. "Morning, baby," Dana said, appearing in the doorway like she'd been summoned by my thoughts. Her hair was tousled from sleep, and she was wearing the navy robe I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked beautiful and familiar and suddenly like a complete stranger. "Morning," I managed, closing the laptop before she could see the screen. She moved to the coffee maker, her movements graceful and practiced. "God, my head is eliminating me. How much did we drink last night?" "You tell me." She glanced over her shoulder, catching something in my tone. "You okay? You sound weird." "Just tired." Dana poured her coffee and settled into the chair across from me, curling her legs under her like a cat. This was our routine, our quiet Sunday morning ritual. Except now it felt like I was sitting across from an actress playing the role of my wife. "Rachel's wedding was beautiful," she said, blowing on her coffee. "I hope we looked that happy at ours." "Speaking of Rachel," I said carefully, "she texted this morning, wanted to thank us for coming." "That's sweet. I should call her later." She also wanted to apologize. Dana's cup paused halfway to her lips. "Apologize for what?" "For filming you at your bachelorette party." The silence that followed was deafening. Dana set down her coffee with deliberate care, her face cycling through emotions too quickly for me to track. Surprise, confusion, and then something that looked a lot like panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally. "Michael?" I said simply. And just like that, the mask slipped completely. Dana's face went white. Not pale, not flushed. White, like someone had drained all the blood from her body in the space of a heartbeat. "Garrett, I can explain." "Then explain." She opened and closed her mouth several times, looking for all the world like a fish gasping for air. Finally, she said, "It's not what it looked like." "What did it look like, Dana?" "You don't understand. Michael is he's my trainer. At the gym. We were celebrating and everyone was drinking and it got out of hand, but it didn't mean anything." I nodded slowly, processing this information. "Your trainer?" "Yes. The trainer you've never mentioned in 3 years of gym membership. I didn't think you'd be interested. The trainer you were grinding against on the dance floor while you took off your wedding ring." Dana flinched like I'd slapped her. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked our backyard. We'd planted those rose bushes together 5 years ago, spent a whole weekend digging and planting and dreaming about the life we'd build in this house. Now they looked like evidence of a crime I'd been too stupid to see. "You're making this into something it's not," she said to the window. "Yes, I had too much to drink. Yes, I made some poor choices, but I love you, Garrett. I married you." "When's the last time you went to the gym?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Simple question. When did you last see your trainer, Michael?" "I don't remember exactly." "This week?" "Garrett, stop." "Last week?" "You're being ridiculous." "Yesterday?" She spun around, her eyes flashing with anger. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking direct questions and getting evasive answers from my wife of 8 years. Dana crossed her arms over her chest, a defensive posture I'd seen 1,000 times but never really noticed. How many other times had she been lying to me? How many conversations had been performances? "I don't have to stand here and be interrogated in my own kitchen," she said. "You're right. You don't." She blinked, clearly expecting me to back down, to apologize, to let this slide like I'd let so many other things slide over the years. The late nights at work, the mysterious phone calls she took in the other room, the credit card charges I'd questioned and then forgotten about. Instead, I stood up and walked past her to the coffee maker. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To get more coffee, then I'm going to the shop for a few hours." "On Sunday? I've got some investigating to do." The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. Dana's face cycled through emotions again. Anger, fear, calculation. I could almost see the wheels turning, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much damage control she needed to do. Garrett, please, can we just talk about this like adults? We are talking. You're just not saying anything true. I grabbed my keys from the counter and headed for the garage. Behind me, Dana called my name, but I didn't turn around. I had work to do. Winter's Auto Repair sits on 3 acres of what used to be farmland, back when this part of town was rural instead of suburban sprawl. I bought the property 8 years ago with money I'd saved from my previous job as a data analyst for an insurance company. Funny how skills transfer, whether you're investigating fraudulent claims or fraudulent wives. The process is pretty much the same. You follow the money, you document everything, and you trust the evidence over emotions. The shop was empty on Sunday, just me and the familiar smell of motor oil and metal. I fired up my laptop in the office and got to work. Michael Torres wasn't hard to find. Dana had tagged him in enough Instagram posts over the past 18 months to create a detailed timeline. Michael Torres, personal trainer and owner of Elite Fitness on the east side of town. 29 years old, originally from Phoenix, moved to our town 2 years ago. The Instagram posts told an interesting story. Dana and Michael at various restaurants around town. Dana and Michael at the beach last summer. A trip she'd told me was a girls' weekend. Dana and Michael at a concert I'd specifically asked to attend, which she'd said was sold out. But the really interesting part was Michael's client list, which he helpfully promoted on his business page. 5 women, all between 28 and 35, all married, all posting pictures with their trainer in situations that looked a lot more personal than professional. I pulled up our joint bank account and started tracing transactions. Dana handled most of our day-to-day finances. She was better with numbers, she said, better at keeping track of bills and expenses. I'd been happy to let her manage it. What I found made my coffee taste like ash. $47,000. Gone. Over the past 2 years, siphoned off in small amounts that I'd never noticed. 300 here, 500 there, the occasional $1,000 emergency that Dana always had a reasonable explanation for. Car repairs, medical bills, gifts for her family. I'd trusted her completely. The money had been transferred to a checking account I'd never seen before, and from there to a property management company called Skyline Lofts. I pulled up their website and found luxury apartments starting at $2,500 a month. I cross-referenced the address with Michael's Instagram location tags. Bingo. My wife had been paying for her boyfriend's apartment for 2 years. The office door chimed, and I looked up to see my foreman Liam walking in with a cup of gas station coffee and a confused expression. "Boss, what are you doing here on Sunday?" Liam McKenzie had worked for me since I opened the shop. He was 52, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of mechanical intuition that made engines purr just by looking at them. He was also the closest thing I had to a best friend, mainly because he was the only person I knew who could fix anything and never asked uncomfortable questions. "Research project," I said. "On what?" "How to destroy someone's life without going to prison." Liam set down his coffee and studied my face. "This about Dana? What makes you say that? You look like someone who just found out his dog has been shitting in his shoes for 8 years. Despite everything, I almost smiled. That's disturbingly accurate. I turned the laptop around and showed him the Instagram posts. Liam whistled low and long. "Well, crap," he said finally. "Yeah. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to be very careful and very thorough, and then I'm going to make sure she never forgets my name again." Liam nodded slowly. "You need help? Maybe. Can you run a background check on someone? Depends on who and why." I showed him Michael's information. "I want to know everything. Criminal history, credit report, employment history, parking tickets, everything. Give me until tomorrow." My phone buzzed with a text from Dana. "Please come home. We need to talk." I showed it to Liam, who snorted. "Bet you do." Another text. "I'm sorry, I love you. Please don't do anything crazy." And then, "Garrett, answer me. You're scaring me." "Good," I said, putting the phone away. She should be scared. I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything I could find. Bank records, social media posts, credit card statements I'd never bothered to examine closely. The picture that emerged was of a woman who'd been living a double life with methodical precision. The Elite Fitness membership she'd claimed to cancel last year, still active with monthly charges of $200 for personal training sessions. The girls' weekend trips that had become more frequent lately. Solo trips to the same resort where Michael had posted pictures from his business conferences. The new lingerie I'd found in her drawer and assumed was a surprise for me. Purchased the same weekend she'd claimed to be visiting her sick aunt in Boston. Every lie had been carefully constructed, every deception planned and executed with the kind of attention to detail that would have been impressive if it hadn't been destroying my life. By the time I drove home, the sun was setting and I had a plan. Dana was waiting in the living room, still in her robe, surrounded by tissues and what looked like the remnants of a panic attack. She jumped up when she heard my key in the door. "Thank God, I was so worried. I thought you might—" She stopped, studying my face. "You look different." "Do I?" "Calmer." "Why do you look calmer?" "Because now I know what I'm dealing with." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very small in our big living room. "What does that mean?" "It means I know about the apartment, Dana. I know about the money. I know about the trips and the lies and all of it." The color drained from her face again. "How could you possibly?" "I'm very good at finding things that are hidden. It's what I used to do for a living, remember?" Dana sank back onto the couch, like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "Garrett, please, let me explain. I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. It started as nothing, just training sessions. But Michael was going through a rough time, and I felt sorry for him, and when he needed help with rent, You just decided to spend $47,000 of our money on another man. It wasn't supposed to be that much. It was supposed to be temporary. What was temporary? The money or the relationship? There is no relationship. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the Instagram photos, the two of them at dinner last month, her hand on his across the table, both of them looking at the camera like they were posing for an engagement announcement. "This was taken the night you said you were working late." Dana stared at the photo like it was written in a foreign language. "You don't understand? Then help me understand. Explain to me how my wife of 8 years has been living with another man for 2 years, while I paid for both households. I'm not living with him. The lease has your name on it, Dana." The silence that followed was deafening. Dana opened and closed her mouth several times, but no sound came out. Finally, she whispered, "How did you find the lease?" "Does it matter?" "Garrett, I can fix this. I can end it. You can't fix this." "Yes, I can. I'll cut all contact with him. I'll close the account. I'll do whatever you want." I studied her face, this woman I'd loved for 11 years, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "What I want is for the last 2 years to not have happened. Can you do that? Please don't do this. Please don't throw away 8 years of marriage over a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This is a choice, a series of choices, hundreds of them, made every day for 2 years." Dana started crying then, big heaving sobs that might have moved me yesterday. Today they sounded like performance art. "I love you," she said through the tears. "I know I screwed up, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something? You called me by his name twice in one night. That was just what? Just your subconscious telling the truth for once?" She flinched like I'd hit her. "That's not fair. You want to know what's not fair? What's not fair is that I've been working 60-hour weeks to pay for a life that didn't exist. What's not fair is that I've been sleeping next to someone who's been lying to me every single day for 2 years. What's not fair is that I had to find out from your sister instead of from you. Rachel doesn't understand. Rachel understands perfectly. She understands that you've been making a fool out of me while I smiled and paid the bills." Dana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and for a moment, I saw a flash of something that wasn't grief or regret. It was anger. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her voice suddenly steady. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Michael. Yes, I've been unhappy. You work all the time. You never want to go anywhere or do anything. And you act like paying the mortgage is the same thing as being a husband." There it was. The real Dana. The one who'd been hiding behind tears and apologies. "So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying marriages take 2 people, and you checked out a long time ago." "When did I check out, Dana? When I was working overtime to pay for your boyfriend's apartment? When I was building a business so we could have a future? When?" "You know what? Forget it. You want to be the sufferer here? Fine. Be the sufferer." She stood up and headed for the stairs, but I called after her, "Dana." She turned around, and I saw something in her face that told me everything I needed to know about how this was going to end. "My name is Garrett," I said quietly. "You might want to practice saying it. You're going to need it for the divorce papers." Dana didn't come downstairs Monday morning. I heard her moving around upstairs, heard the shower run, heard her make phone calls in hushed tones behind the bedroom door. But she didn't come down for coffee, didn't try to continue our conversation from the night before, didn't attempt any more tearful apologies. That was fine with me. I had bigger problems to worry about. Liam was waiting in my office when I got to the shop, a manila folder in his hands and an expression that suggested I wasn't going to like what he'd found. "Your boy Michael is an interesting character," he said without preamble. "How interesting?" 3 arrests in Phoenix for fraud, 2 convictions, 1 plea bargain, moved here right after his parole ended. I sat down behind my desk and opened the folder. Michael Torres had been busy before he became a personal trainer. Credit card fraud, identity theft, and something called romance scam operation that had netted him $60,000 from 4 different women before the authorities caught up with him. Romance scam? I asked. Classic setup. Target lonely or unhappy women, usually married, usually with access to money. Make them feel special, create emotional dependency, then start asking for financial help. Small amounts at first, then bigger and bigger until they're in too deep to back out. I thought about the timeline. Michael had moved to town 2 years ago. Dana had started going to his gym 6 months later. The money transfers had started shortly after that. "He's running the same game here," I said. "Looks like it. And your wife isn't his only client." Liam pulled out another set of photos, screenshots from social media accounts. 5 women all posing with Michael in various intimate settings, all wearing wedding rings in some photos, not wearing them in others. "I recognize 2 of these women," I said. "Jennifer Walsh and Susan Martinez. They're both married to guys I know from the Chamber of Commerce. Might want to give them a heads up." I studied the photos more carefully. The women all had the same look, excited, guilty, like they were getting away with something thrilling and dangerous. I'd seen that same look on Dana's face lately, in moments when she thought I wasn't watching. "There's more," Liam said. "Your boy Michael is in some financial trouble. Owes money to some people who don't take payment plans." "What kind of people?" "The kind who break kneecaps for a living." He showed me another document, a loan agreement between Michael and something called Phoenix Capital Solutions. $50,000 at 30% interest with a payment schedule that would have been aggressive even for someone with legitimate income. "Phoenix Capital isn't a bank," Liam explained. "It's a front for a loan shark operation. Michael borrowed money to set up his business here, and he's behind on payments." I did the math. $47,000 from Dana, plus whatever he was getting from the other women. It was enough to keep him afloat, but barely. "How behind?" 3 months. They've been calling his gym, his apartment, even his mother in Phoenix. He's running out of time. I leaned back in my chair, pieces clicking into place. So he's desperate enough to do something stupid. My phone rang. Dana's number. "Don't answer it," Liam advised. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message on speaker. Dana's voice was carefully controlled, artificially calm. "Garrett, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. There are things you don't understand about the situation. Call me back." "Things you don't understand," Liam repeated. "That sounds ominous." The phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Answer that one," Liam said. "Garrett? Thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Why?" "Dana called me this morning. She's saying some things that don't make sense." "What kind of things?" "She's claiming that you've been abusive, that you've been controlling her money and threatening her. She wants me to lie for her if anyone asks." I closed my eyes. And I told her to go to hell. "But Garrett, she's scared, really scared. Not of you, of something else. She kept asking if I'd told anyone else about the video, if I'd sent it to anyone besides you." "Why would that matter?" "I don't know. But she's planning something, I can tell." I thought about Michael's financial problems, about his history of fraud, about the kind of people who were looking for him. If Dana was his primary source of income, and if she'd just told him that I'd found out about their arrangement. "Rachel, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Stay away from Dana for a while. Don't answer her calls. Don't meet with her. Don't let her in your house." "Why?" "Because I think she's about to make some very bad decisions, and I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire." After I hung up, Liam and I sat in silence for several minutes, both of us staring at the evidence spread across my desk. So what's the play? He finally asked. I need to see Michael face to face. That's a terrible idea. Probably. But I need to know what I'm dealing with. And if he's as dangerous as his record suggests, then I'll deal with that too. Elite Fitness was exactly what I'd expected. All chrome and mirrors and motivational posters about crushing your goals. The kind of place where people paid 3 times the going rate for the privilege of sweating in designer workout clothes. Michael Torres was in the middle of a training session when I walked in, spotting a blonde woman who was clearly more interested in impressing him than in actually lifting weights. He was exactly what I'd expected too. Handsome in an obvious way, with the kind of smile that probably worked on women who were looking for excitement in their lives. I waited until the session ended, then approached him at the front desk. Michael Torres? He looked up from his appointment book, and I saw the exact moment when he recognized me. His face went through the same cycle of emotions I'd seen on Dana's. Surprise, confusion, then calculation. You must be Garrett, he said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business conference. Dana's told me so much about you. I didn't shake his hand. I'm sure she has. His smile faltered slightly. Is there something I can help you with? Actually, yes. I was hoping you could explain why my wife has been paying your rent for 2 years. The gym went quiet. The blonde woman who'd been packing up her things suddenly found reasons to linger near the water fountain. The desk clerk pretended to organize paperwork while obviously listening to every word. Michael's face flushed red. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. $47,000 is a pretty specific misunderstanding. Maybe we should discuss this somewhere more private. I'm comfortable here. Michael glanced around the gym, clearly aware that we had an audience. Look, I don't know what Dana told you, but Dana didn't tell me anything. Bank records told me everything. He was sweating now, despite the air conditioning. Whatever you think is happening, I think you're a con artist who targets married women. I think you've been running the same scam you ran in Phoenix. And I think you're in trouble with some very unpleasant people who want their money back. The color drained from his face completely. You don't know what you're talking about. Phoenix Capital Solutions, $50,000 at 30%, 3 months behind. Michael's hand moved instinctively to his phone, probably calculating whether he had time to warn Dana or his other marks before I could do any more damage. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to close whatever account she's been paying into, and you're going to figure out your debt problems without involving her. You can't tell me who I can and can't see? Actually, I can, because in about an hour, I'm going to call Jennifer Walsh's husband and Susan Martinez's husband and tell them exactly what kind of business you're really running. How long do you think it'll take before this whole thing unravels? Michael's jaw clenched. You don't want to threaten me. That wasn't a threat, that was a schedule. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. You think you know what's going on, but you don't. Dana isn't some innocent sufferer here. She knew exactly what she was doing. I looked back at him. Meaning? Meaning she's the one who suggested the financial arrangement. She's the one who wanted to keep it secret. And she's the one who's been pushing me to ask for more. More what? Michael smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. More money, more commitment, more everything. Your wife isn't being scammed, Garrett. She's a willing participant who's in way deeper than you think. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying you might want to ask Dana about the insurance policy she took out on you 6 months ago, the one she thinks I don't know about. The gym was completely silent now. Even the music had stopped. You're lying. Am I? Ask her about mutual life insurance. Ask her about the $2 million policy she bought with you as the beneficiary. Ask her why she's been so interested in your work schedule lately. Why she's been encouraging you to take that motorcycle trip you've been talking about. My mouth went dry. I had been talking about taking a motorcycle trip. A solo ride through the mountains, something I'd been planning for months. Dana had been surprisingly supportive, even helpful with the planning. You're full of crap. Maybe, but you're going to check, aren't you? Because now you're wondering what else you don't know about your loving wife. I left the gym with Michael's laughter echoing behind me, my hands shaking as I started the truck. An insurance policy. $2 million. Encouragement to take a dangerous solo trip. It couldn't be true. Dana might be a cheater and a liar, but she wasn't a butcher. Was she? I pulled out my phone and called my insurance agent. Garrett, good to hear from you. How's Dana doing with her new policy? My blood turned to ice. Her new policy? The life insurance she took out a few months ago. Beautiful coverage. I have to say, it's nice to see a wife who's so concerned about her husband's future security. Can you send me a copy of that policy? Of course. Is everything all right? No, you sound strange. Everything's fine, just want to review the details. I hung up and sat in the gym parking lot, staring at my phone. $2 million. Enough to pay off Michael's debts, enough to start a new life somewhere else, enough to make a homicide look like an accident worth committing. My phone buzzed with a text from Dana. Where are you? We need to talk. It's important. I stared at the message for a long time, wondering if I was married to a woman who was planning to eliminate me. Then I started the truck and drove to the police station. Detective Sarah Martinez looked like she'd rather be anywhere else than listening to me explain why I thought my wife might be planning to homicide me. She was about 40, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd heard every possible variation of domestic drama over the course of her career. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, reviewing the notes she'd taken. Your wife has been having an affair with a convicted con artist, spending your money to pay his debts, and recently took out a large life insurance policy on you. That's right. And you think this means she's planning to eliminate you? I think it's a possibility worth investigating. Detective Martinez set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. Mr. Winters, I've been doing this job for 18 years. In my experience, when marriages fall apart, people tend to assume the worst about their spouses. But there's a big difference between infidelity and homicide. What about the insurance policy? What about it? Lots of couples have life insurance. It's actually pretty responsible financial planning. $2 million? Taken out secretly. Was it taken out secretly, or did you just not pay attention when she mentioned it? I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it. Had Dana mentioned insurance? I tried to think back over the past few months, but the conversations blurred together. How many things had she told me that I'd only half listened to because I was thinking about work or bills or the million other things that fill up a marriage? Look, Detective Martinez continued, I can see you're upset, and you have every right to be. Your wife cheated on you and spent your money. That's terrible, and I'm sorry. But it's not criminal. What about the fraud? Michael Torres has a record in another state for different crimes. Unless you can prove he's committed fraud here, there's nothing I can do. I pulled out the folder Liam had given me and spread the contents across her desk. 5 women, all married, all giving him money. That's not a pattern. Detective Martinez glanced at the photos and documents. It's suspicious, I'll give you that. But suspicious isn't illegal. If these women are voluntarily giving him money, even for stupid reasons, that's their choice. What if they don't know about each other? Still not illegal. Immoral, maybe. Sleazy, definitely, but not criminal. I felt frustration building in my chest. So there's nothing you can do. I didn't say that. I can make some calls, ask some questions. If Mr. Torres is running a scam operation, we'll find evidence. But, Mr. Winters? She leaned forward, her expression serious. Don't take this into your own hands. Don't confront him again. Don't threaten him. Don't do anything that could be construed as maltreatment or intimidation. What if he really is dangerous? Then you get a restraining order and you stay away from him. You don't try to be a hero. I gathered up the papers and stood to leave. What about the insurance policy? What about it? Should I be worried? Detective Martinez studied my face for a long moment. Winters, do you really think your wife is capable of homicide? I thought about Dana, the woman who cried during sad movies, who rescued stray cats, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral 3 years ago. The woman who'd called me Michael twice in one night and lied about it to my face. A week ago, I would have said no. Today, I honestly don't know. Then maybe you should consider staying somewhere else for a while, until you figure things out. I drove home in a haze of confusion and anger. The house looked the same as always. Neat lawn, painted shutters, the kind of suburban perfection that suggested normal people living normal lives. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Dana's car was gone. Inside, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to think. Back tonight. We need to talk. D. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then went upstairs to pack a bag. If Detective Martinez was right and I was being paranoid, I'd feel stupid for a few days and then move on with my life. If she was wrong and Dana really was planning something, I'd be alive to deal with the consequences. I was throwing clothes into a duffel bag when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the bedroom window, I could see Dana getting out of her sedan, but she wasn't alone. Michael Torres was with her. They stood by her car for several minutes, having what looked like an intense conversation. Michael was gesturing animatedly, clearly agitated about something. Dana kept shaking her head, her arms crossed defensively. Then Michael grabbed her arm, and I saw Dana's face change. The expression that crossed her features wasn't fear or surprise, it was anger. She jerked away from him and said something that made him step back like she'd slapped him. They talked for a few more minutes, their body language tense and hostile. Finally, Michael got back in his car and drove away, leaving Dana standing alone in the driveway. I finished packing and was heading for the stairs when Dana came through the front door. "Garrett, are you home?" I appeared at the top of the stairs with my bag in hand. Dana looked up at me, and I saw her eyes widen when she noticed the duffel. "Where are you going?" "Away." "What do you mean, away?" I came down the stairs slowly, watching her face. She looked tired and stressed, but not like someone who'd just been planning a homicide. Then again, I was beginning to realize I had no idea what Dana really looked like when she was planning anything. "I mean, I'm going to stay somewhere else for a while." "Because of Michael?" "Garrett, I told you, that's over. I ended it." "When?" "Today, just now. That's where I was, ending it." "Is that what that conversation in the driveway was about?" Dana's face went pale. "You were watching?" "Hard to miss." He seemed upset. "He was, but it's done. I told him I'm not leaving you, I'm not giving him any more money, and I don't want to see him again." "And he was okay with that?" "He'll have to be." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But Dana had been lying to me for 2 years. If I couldn't spot it then, how could I trust myself to spot it now? "What about the insurance policy?" Dana blinked. "What insurance policy?" "The $2 million life insurance policy you took out on me 6 months ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Dana's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. "I can explain." "Then explain." "It was Michael's idea. He said we should have more life insurance, that it was smart financial planning. Michael suggested that you take out a life insurance policy on me." "Yes, but—" "Michael, who you were planning to leave me for." "I wasn't planning to leave you for him." "Then what were you planning?" Dana sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. He was so persuasive, and I was confused, and everything got so complicated so fast." "Complicated how?" "He owed money to some dangerous people. He said they were threatening him, that he needed help, that if I really loved him, I would find a way to help him." "So you took out an insurance policy on your husband?" "I never thought about it like that. He made it sound like it was the responsible thing to do." I sat down across from her, my duffel bag at my feet. "Dana, do you understand how this looks?" "I know how it looks, but it's not what you think." "What do I think?" "You think I was planning to hurt you, but I wasn't, I swear. The insurance was just in case something happened. People have accidents all the time, and I wanted to make sure I was protected." "Protected from what?" "From being left with nothing if something happened to you, or from being left with nothing if something didn't happen to me." Dana looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I know you don't believe me, but I would never hurt you, never. You've been hurting me for 2 years. That's different." "Is it?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do you want me to do? How do I fix this?" "You can't fix this. There has to be something." "There's nothing. You made your choices, Dana. Now you have to live with the consequences." I stood up and grabbed my bag. Dana jumped to her feet. "Please don't go. Please, we can work this out." "No, we can't." "Yes, we can. I'll cancel the insurance policy. I'll pay back every penny I gave to Michael. I'll do whatever it takes. What you can do is stay away from me while I figure out what comes next." "Garrett, please." "My name is Garrett," I said quietly. "You might want to practice saying it. You're going to be hearing it a lot in divorce court." I walked out of the house, leaving Dana crying on the couch. As I drove away, I could see her in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway like she was waiting for me to change my mind and come back. But I wasn't coming back. Not to that house, not to that marriage, and not to the woman who'd spent 2 years lying to my face while planning God knows what with a convicted con artist. I checked into a motel on the other side of town and spent the evening staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd become the kind of man who had to worry about whether his wife was planning to eliminate him. The next morning, I called a lawyer. "Attorney Jennifer Walsh, no relation to the Jennifer Walsh who was probably being scammed by Michael Torres. Had the kind of office that suggested she'd handled plenty of messy divorces and won most of them. Diplomas and bar certifications covered one wall, while the other displayed photos of her with various judges and politicians. 8 years of marriage, no children, and evidence of infidelity, she summarized, after I'd finished explaining my situation. Plus financial malfeasance and possible insurance fraud. This should be fairly straightforward. How straightforward? In this state, infidelity is grounds for fault divorce. Combined with the financial evidence you've gathered, you should be able to keep most of your assets and avoid paying alimony. What about the life insurance policy? That's more complicated. Taking out a policy isn't illegal, even if the circumstances are suspicious, but it could be evidence of intent if there are other factors. What kind of other factors? Jennifer Walsh leaned back in her chair. Has your wife made any threats against you? Has she encouraged you to engage in dangerous activities? Has she shown any interest in your work schedule or travel plans? I thought about the motorcycle trip, about how enthusiastic Dana had been about my plans to ride solo through mountain roads I'd never traveled before. Maybe. Maybe isn't enough for criminal charges, but it might be enough to get the policy canceled and add weight to the divorce proceedings. She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. I'll need copies of all your financial records, evidence of the affair, and documentation of any threats or suspicious behavior. How long will this take? Depends on whether she contests it. If she agrees to settle quickly, we could have this wrapped up in a few months. If she fights, Jennifer shrugged. Could take a year or more. And in the meantime, stay away from her. Don't communicate except through lawyers. Don't do anything that could be construed as threatening or maltreating. And Mr. Winters? Yeah, be very careful. People do desperate things when they're cornered, and your wife is about to lose everything. I left the lawyer's office with a retainer agreement and a restraining order application, but also with a growing sense of unease. If Dana really was involved with dangerous people, if Michael Torres really owed money to loan sharks, then cornering them both might not be the smartest strategy. My phone rang as I was getting into the truck. Liam, boss, you need to get down here. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where your wife's boyfriend is in the parking lot asking questions about you. I drove to the shop faster than was probably legal, my mind racing through possibilities. Was Michael trying to intimidate me, gather information, or was this something worse? I found Liam in the office, watching through the window as Michael Torres paced back and forth next to a beat-up Honda Civic that definitely hadn't been his car yesterday. How long has he been out there? About an hour. Keeps asking if you're coming in when you usually get here, whether you have any enemies who might want to hurt you. Enemies who might want to hurt me? That's what I thought was weird. Why would he care about your enemies unless he was planning to become one? I studied Michael through the window. He looked different than he had at the gym, more desperate, more dangerous. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was unkempt, and he kept checking his phone like he was expecting bad news. Has he talked to any of the other guys? Tried to. Most of them told him to get lost. But he did corner Jimmy when he went out for lunch. Jimmy Reeves was our youngest mechanic, barely 22 and not particularly bright. If Michael wanted information, Jimmy would be an easy target. What did he tell Jimmy? That you and him had some kind of business dispute. That you'd been threatening him and his girlfriend. That he was worried you might try to hurt them. I felt cold anger building in my chest. He's setting up a narrative. That's what I figured. Making it look like you're the aggressor, so if something happens to him, or if something happens to me. Liam nodded grimly. You think he's planning something? I think he's desperate enough to try anything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park in 1 hour. Come alone. Michael? Liam asked, reading over my shoulder. Has to be. You're not going. Actually, I am. Boss, that's a terrible idea. Maybe, but I need to know what he wants. And I need him to stop sniffing around here. Then we call the cops. And tell them what? That he's standing in a public parking lot asking questions? That's not illegal. Liam was quiet for a moment, staring out at Michael. You know this is probably a trap. Probably. And you're going anyway. I'm going anyway. Then I'm coming with you. No, you're not. If this goes bad, I need someone who knows what happened and can tell the police. If this goes bad, you need someone with a tire iron who can keep you alive. I considered this. Liam had a point. Michael Torres might be a con artist, but he was also a desperate con artist with dangerous creditors, and desperate people did desperate things. Fine. But you stay in the truck, and if anything looks wrong, you call 911 immediately. Riverside Park was mostly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. A few joggers, a woman walking her dog, some teenagers skipping school. Michael was sitting on a bench near the river, still checking his phone obsessively. I parked where Liam could see the bench clearly and walked over to Michael. Up close, he looked even worse. Dark circles under his eyes, a nervous twitch in his left hand, the kind of jittery energy that suggested too much caffeine or not enough sleep. "You look like hell," I said, sitting down on the opposite end of the bench. "Yeah, well, that's what happens when your life gets destroyed in 24 hours. "Whose fault is that?" Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really think you're the good guy here, don't you? I think I'm the guy who got cheated on and robbed. That makes me a sufferer, not a villain." "You want to know what makes you a villain? The fact that you destroyed 5 women's lives just to get revenge on one." "What are you talking about? Jennifer Walsh, Susan Martinez, the others. You called their husbands, didn't you?" I had called them the day after my conversation with Detective Martinez. It had seemed like the right thing to do, warn them about what their wives were involved in, give them the same chance to protect themselves that I wished I'd had. They deserved to know the truth. The truth. The truth is that you just destroyed 5 marriages because you were pissed off about your own. I destroyed 5 marriages. What about you? I gave those women what they were looking for. Excitement, attention, someone who made them feel alive again. Yeah, they gave me money, but they got something in return. They got scammed. They got what they paid for. I stared at him, amazed by his ability to rationalize what he'd done. "You're unbelievable. And you're naive. You think those women were innocent sufferers? They knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to cheat on their husbands, and I gave them an excuse, including Dana. Especially Dana." Michael turned to face me, and I saw something ugly in his expression. "You want to know the truth about your precious wife? She's the one who came on to me. She's the one who suggested the financial arrangement. And she's the one who brought up the insurance policy." "You're lying." "Am I? Ask her about the night we met. Ask her what she said about you. Ask her what she said she wanted to do to you." "What did she say?" Michael smiled, and it was the most unpleasant expression I'd ever seen on a human face. "She said she wished you would just disappear. She said she was tired of being married to someone so boring and predictable. She said she fantasized about what her life would be like if you were gone." I felt something cold and sharp twist in my stomach. "That doesn't mean—" "She asked me if I knew anyone who could make problems disappear. She asked me if I'd ever thought about what would happen if someone had an accident. She asked me a lot of questions, Garrett, and none of them were about leaving you. They were all about you leaving permanently." "You're full of crap." "Maybe, but you're going to wonder now, aren't you? Every time you think about her, you're going to wonder what she was really planning." Michael stood up from the bench, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Here's the thing, though. It doesn't matter anymore. You destroyed my business, you destroyed my income, and you got me in trouble with some very unforgiving people. So now I've got nothing left to lose." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm leaving town tonight. But before I go, I'm going to make sure you understand exactly what you cost me." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you." Michael started walking away, then turned back. "Oh, and Garrett, you might want to ask Dana about the brake fluid in your truck. She's been very interested in your maintenance schedule lately." He was gone before I could respond, leaving me sitting on the bench with my heart pounding and my mind racing. The brake fluid in my truck, Donna asking about maintenance schedules, the motorcycle trip she'd been so enthusiastic about. I ran back to where Liam was waiting and told him to follow me to the nearest auto shop. 20 minutes later, a mechanic named Rodriguez was showing me the brake lines on my truck. "See this?" he said, pointing to a small cut in one of the lines. "This isn't normal wear. Someone did this deliberately." "How long before they would have failed?" "Hard to say. Maybe a few days, maybe a week. But when they went, you would have lost all braking power." "Could it eliminate someone?" Rodriguez shrugged. "Depends on where you were when it happened. Highway speeds, mountain roads, heavy traffic. Yeah, it could definitely eliminate someone." I stared at the severed brake line, thinking about the motorcycle trip, about the mountain roads, I'd been planning to travel, about how enthusiastic Dana had been about my plans. Can you fix it? Sure, take about an hour. While Rodriguez worked on the truck, I called Detective Martinez. Mr. Winters, I thought I told you to stay away from... Someone cut my brake lines. There was a long pause. Are you sure? The mechanic says it was definitely deliberate. Where are you now? I gave her the address of the auto shop. Stay there. Don't touch anything else on your vehicle. Don't go anywhere alone, and don't contact your wife. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at Liam, who was staring at the truck like it had personally betrayed him. Boss, he said quietly, I think your wife really was trying to eliminate you. Yeah, I said. I think you're right. Detective Martinez arrived with 2 other officers and a crime scene photographer who documented my truck like it was evidence in a homicide trial, which I realized it probably was. The cut is clean and deliberate, she told me after examining the brake lines. Someone who knew what they were doing made this, and they timed it so the failure would happen after you'd been driving for a while. How long have I been driving on these? Hard to say. Could be days, could be a week. You're lucky you didn't take any long trips recently. I thought about the motorcycle trip I'd been planning, about the mountain roads and highway speeds, about how different this conversation would be if I'd left town as scheduled. What happens now? Now we arrest your wife for attempted homicide. The words hung in the air like a capital punishment. Attempted homicide. My wife of 8 years had tried to eliminate me for insurance money and a con artist with a criminal record. What about Michael Torres? We'll bring him in for questioning, but unless we can prove he was directly involved in tampering with your vehicle, the most we can charge him with is conspiracy. He admitted he was leaving town tonight. Then we better move fast. Detective Martinez made a series of phone calls while the crime scene team finished with my truck. I sat in the auto shop office with Liam, both of us staring at the coffee machine like it held answers to questions we didn't know how to ask. You okay, boss? No. Stupid question. It's not your fault. I know. But I keep thinking about all the time she came by the shop, all the time she asked questions about your schedule, your truck, your plans. I should have noticed something. I lived with her for 8 years and didn't notice anything. Why would you? Because I'm not in love with her. That was the truth I'd been avoiding. I had been in love with Dana, completely and blindly in love, right up until the moment she called me Michael at her sister's wedding. Even after I'd found out about the affair, part of me had hoped we could work things out somehow. But attempted homicide was a line you couldn't uncross. My phone rang. Dana's number. Don't answer it, Detective Martinez said, walking back into the office. We're going to pick her up now, and I don't want her to have any warning. What if she runs? Where's she going to go? We've already put out a bolo for Michael Torres, and we're watching the airports and bus stations. What about the other women? The other wives he was scamming? We'll interview them, but right now our priority is your case. Attempted homicide trumps fraud. Detective Martinez left with her team to arrest Dana, leaving me and Liam alone with a repaired truck and the knowledge that my marriage had ended not with papers filed in divorce court, but with handcuffs clicked around my wife's wrists. You want to go see it? Liam asked. See what? The arrest. She's probably at your house right now, wondering where you are, planning her next move. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Dana's face when the police showed up, wanted to watch her realize that her plan had failed and her life was over. But a bigger part of me just wanted to be done with all of it. No, I said finally. I never want to see her again. What about the house? What about it? It's your house too. Your stuff is there. My stuff can wait. Right now I just want to go somewhere Dana has never been and try to figure out what comes next. We drove to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar on the industrial side of town that Dana would never have set foot in. It was dark and quiet and smelled like beer and cigarettes. Exactly the kind of place where a man could sit and think about how his life had just exploded. Liam ordered whiskey. I stuck with beer. So what's the plan? He asked. I don't know. I guess I wait for the trial, testify about what happened, and try to move on. And the business? What about it? You're going to need something to focus on, something to keep you busy while all this legal stuff plays out. The shop will be fine. I'm not talking about the shop. I'm talking about you. I drank my beer and thought about what Liam was saying. He was right. I was going to need something to occupy my mind, something to keep me from spending the next year thinking about brake lines and insurance policies and the woman I'd loved who'd tried to eliminate me. Maybe I'll take that motorcycle trip after all, I said, with working brakes this time. With working brakes. My phone buzzed with a call from Detective Martinez. We got her. she said without preamble. How did she react? About what you'd expect. Denied everything, claimed she was being framed, said you were the one who'd been threatening her. Did she ask for a lawyer? Eventually, but not before she said some interesting things about Mr. Torres. Like what? Like the fact that he'd been pressuring her to help him disappear. Like the fact that he'd threatened to hurt you if she didn't get him more money. Like the fact that she was afraid of him. So she's blaming everything on Michael. Pretty much. Claims he manipulated her, forced her to take out the insurance policy, threatened to hurt both of you if she didn't cooperate. Do you believe her? There was a long pause. Mr. Winters, in my experience, the truth in cases like this is usually somewhere in the middle. Your wife made some terrible choices, but she might not be the criminal mastermind you think she is. What does that mean for the charges? Depends on what we find when we catch Torres. If he really was the one calling the shots, she might be looking at conspiracy instead of attempted homicide. And if he wasn't, then she's looking at 25 to life. After Detective Martinez hung up, I sat in Murphy's tavern and tried to process what she'd told me. Dana, blaming everything on Michael. Michael threatening both of us. The possibility that my wife was a sufferer instead of a perpetrator. You don't look relieved, Liam observed. I'm not sure how I feel. You feel like maybe she didn't try to eliminate you after all? I feel like I don't know what to believe anymore. Boss, let me ask you something. Do you think Dana is smart enough to plan a homicide? I thought about it. Dana was intelligent, but she wasn't particularly cunning. She was organized, but not devious. She was ambitious, but not ruthless. Probably not, I admitted. Do you think she's ruthless enough to go through with it? I don't know. Do you think she loves you enough to be manipulated into doing something she wouldn't normally do? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Did Dana love me? Had she ever loved me? Or had the entire 8 years been an elaborate performance? I thought she did, but now you're not sure. Now I'm not sure about anything. We finished our drinks in silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Outside, the sun was setting over a day that had started with me thinking my wife was a would-be butcher and ended with me wondering if she was just another sufferer of Michael Torres's scams. My phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. Garrett, I just heard about Dana. Are you okay? I'm fine. I can't believe I knew she was cheating, but this... Rachel, can I ask you something? Of course. At the wedding, when Dana called me Michael the first time, you looked angry, not surprised, angry, like you already knew. There was a long pause. I suspected. For how long? A while. She'd been acting different, secretive, and she'd mentioned someone named Michael a few times, always in passing, like she was testing to see if I'd react. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wasn't sure, and because... Rachel's voice broke slightly. Because I was hoping I was wrong. But you filmed her at the bachelorette party. I filmed everyone at the bachelorette party. I just happened to catch her with him. And you sent it to me because after she called you Michael at my wedding, I knew you deserved to know the truth. I closed my eyes, thinking about the chain of events that had led from Rachel's video to Dana's arrest. If Rachel hadn't filmed the bachelorette party, if she hadn't sent me the video, if I hadn't started investigating, do you think she would have gone through with it? I asked. Gone through with what? Eliminating me. Rachel was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Rachel? I don't know, she said finally. A week ago, I would have said absolutely not. But a week ago, I wouldn't have thought she was capable of any of this. What changed? Michael Torres changed her. She became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who was willing to lie and steal and hurt people she claimed to love. So yeah, maybe she would have gone through with it. Or maybe she would have chickened out at the last minute. I honestly don't know. After Rachel hung up, I sat in Murphy's tavern until closing time, nursing beer and thinking about the woman I'd married 8 years ago and the stranger she'd apparently become. Liam had gone home hours earlier and leaving me alone with my thoughts and a bartender who'd seen enough broken men to know when to offer conversation and when to offer silence. At midnight, I drove to the motel where I'd been staying and lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. The next morning, Detective Martinez called to tell me they'd found Michael Torres trying to board a bus to Mexico with a fake ID and $12,000 in cash. He's talking, she said. And what he's saying is very interesting. What's he saying? He's saying your wife was the mastermind. He's saying she approached him about the insurance policy, she suggested the brake line sabotage, and she promised him half the money if he helped her make it look like an accident. So now they're blaming each other. Pretty much. Which means we'll probably never know exactly who is telling the truth. What happens now? Now they both go to trial, and a jury decides who's lying. I hung up the phone and realized that it didn't matter anymore. Whether Dana had been the mastermind or just a willing participant, whether she'd been manipulated or had done the manipulating, the result was the same. My marriage was over, my trust was shattered, and my wife was going to prison. It was time to start over. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified about the brake lines, the insurance policy, the financial fraud, and the affair. I watched Dana sit at the defense table in a conservative blue suit, looking like the woman I'd married instead of the stranger who'd tried to eliminate me. She never looked at me during my testimony. Not once. Michael Torres took the stand and blamed everything on Dana. Dana took the stand and blamed everything on Michael. The jury deliberated for 2 days and came back with guilty verdicts for both of them. Dana got 15 years for conspiracy to commit homicide and insurance fraud. Michael got 20 for the same charges plus his previous convictions. I wasn't in the courtroom when the verdicts were read. I was in Colorado, riding my motorcycle through mountain passes with working brakes and a clear conscience. The divorce was finalized while I was on the road. Dana signed the papers from prison, giving up any claim to the house, the business, or the life we'd built together. I kept everything, which felt like winning and losing at the same time. I sold the house when I got back from Colorado. Too many memories, too many lies hidden in familiar rooms. I bought a smaller place across town, somewhere Dana had never been, somewhere I could start fresh. The business thrived. Turns out being the guy whose wife tried to eliminate him for insurance money made for great local publicity. People brought their cars to me because they felt sorry for me. And they kept bringing them back because I did good work. Liam became my business partner. We expanded the shop, hired more mechanics, started specializing in classic car restoration. We never talked about Dana unless we had to, and we had to less and less as time went on. I never remarried. Never even came close. Some damage is too deep to heal completely, and some trust is too broken to rebuild. But I learned to be happy alone, learned to enjoy my own company, learned that a quiet life isn't the same thing as a lonely life. 5 years after the trial, I got a letter from Dana. She was up for parole and wanted to apologize, wanted to explain, wanted to see if there was any chance for forgiveness. I threw the letter away without reading it completely. 6 months later, I got another letter. This one I read all the way through. Dana was sorry, she said. She'd been manipulated and confused and had made terrible choices. She understood if I could never forgive her, but she wanted me to know that she'd loved me, really loved me, even when she was betraying me. I threw that letter away too. The third letter came a year later. Dana was getting out of prison in 6 months. She had nowhere to go, no money, no family who would speak to her. She wasn't asking me to take her back, she said. She just wanted me to know that she understood what she'd cost us both. I kept that letter for a week before throwing it away. Dana was released on a Tuesday in October. I know because Rachel called to tell me, to warn me, to make sure I was prepared in case Dana tried to contact me. She didn't. I never saw her again, never heard from her again. Never found out where she went or what she did with the rest of her life. She disappeared as completely as if she'd never existed, leaving behind only memories and scars and the occasional nightmare about brake lines and insurance policies. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd remember the good times. The early years when we were happy, when we laughed together and planned a future together and thought we'd found something that would last forever. And sometimes I'd remember the wedding, the moment when everything started to unravel, the moment when my wife called me by another man's name and changed both our lives forever. My name is Garrett Winters. I'm 45 years old. I own a successful auto repair business, and I sleep alone in a house where no one has ever lied to me. It's not the life I planned, but it's the life I chose after my wife tried to eliminate me for insurance money. And I'm okay with that.